Hello everyone, welcome back to Exploder. We're here with another episode just for you. I mean you in the general sense, not anyone in particular. I'm looking at you, Jeff. Anyway, professional wrestling is filled with a lot of really good gimmicks and a whole heaping load of bad ones. And some of them, a select few, come because of a booker or a writer or someone who just is having a bad day and they wanted to stick it to somebody. Not necessarily the talent, but someone else unrelated. So in this episode, we're going to cover wrestling gimmicks, groups, and what have you that were created purely out of spite. Yeah, that's right. These are spite gimmicks, and I think you're going to enjoy them. I'm going to start with the one that everyone knows about. If you're a professional wrestling fan, you know this one, so I'm just going to cover it real quick. This one is the manservant of Ted DiBiase, aka Virgil. Yes, Michael Soul Train Jones came to the WWF in the 80s to join Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. He was his manservant, did everything for him from bring him to the ring to hold his title to I don't even want to know what he does later. The gimmick was real in that he did it on TV and in real life as part of the gimmick, and now he would kill to have such a steady job. But the name Virgil, where did that come from? Well, quite frankly, before they actually got a hold of him and polka dotted the hell out of his ass, there was something about the WWF and Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes' real name was, of course, Virgil Runnels. So what they decided to do, name Ted DiBiase's manservant Virgil. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish other than, aha, that stuck it to him. And then they got him and put polka dots on him and put him with an overweight African-American woman who didn't know wrestling, but which he still got over, by the way. So screw you, Vince. So that's just starting with that one. Virgil was a rib. I don't know if that counts as spite, to be honest with you. Just now that I say it out loud, I'm not sure if it counts as spite, but it's a nice little tidbit. So we go from the more benign to the more absurd. And of course, yes, I'm talking about WCW. Former WWF writer and Vince Russo +1, Ed Ferrara, came to WCW with the aforementioned Russo in 1999 because of course he did. Keep in mind, this man would eventually be a white guy with dreadlocks, so maybe his life choices aren't the greatest. Anyway, when he got there, he decided, why not? He's gonna burn every bridge. Not only burn the bridges that he had, he's gonna burn the bridge, shoot the workers building a new bridge, burn that bridge, pee on the ashes, and then set fire to the ashes. That was a vivid description I just gave there. Anyway, he was gonna do this by creating a gimmick called Oklahoma. Now I'm gonna put up a picture right now of Oklahoma. Now you take 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, and tell me who that is. That's right, that's Jim Ross. Cowboy hat, his name's Oklahoma. They even put the WWF logo on his trunks at one point, which was brilliant. Now it's not the cowboy hat, it's not that he yelled hoovy or pinata, which was annoying, but it's not that he did that. Here's where he went wrong. If he had done everything but what I'm about to describe, he would have been fine. But of course, being Ed Ferrara, dreadlocks and all, he really didn't know how subtlety worked, does he, Vince? Anyway, this is what he did wrong. Jim Ross suffered from a condition called Bell's palsy, in which he has a stroke that caused the left side of his face to go numb. He was announcing one time he actually had an attack while announcing. Now, what do you do to a disorder like this? I know, you recreate it in your wrestling character. That's right, Ed Ferrara as Oklahoma not only wore the cowboy hat and the tights and talked about barbecue sauce and brought in Steve Williams, but no, he had to replicate the fact that Jim Ross could not feel the left side of his face. Classy. This gimmick was created purely out of spite for Jim Ross, which is bizarre. There was no angle, there was no payoff, there was no real reason for it besides Ed Ferrara wanted to stick it to an announcer on the other company. Wow. I mean, what do you say to that? Screw Ed Ferrara. That's what I say. Now it's time for Newsflash, where Gilbert is undefeated. Randy Orton's personal tattoo artist is suing WWE and 2K Games for copyright infringement, claiming her tattoos are being used without her permission. WWE has agreed to pay her as long as she promised to stop giving Randy Orton tattoos. Enough is enough. Ending their 6-year relationship, John Cena and Nikki Bella recorded their breakup for Total Bellas, because of course they did. The drunken 2 a.m. phone calls will be shared on Instagram. Rude Woodland elf Alexa Bliss is currently on the sidelines healing from an enhancement surgery. I'll give you 2 guesses what was enhanced. WWE just completed the greatest Royal Rumble in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, a 50-man battle royal, with the winner of course being the Iron Sheik. WWE has recently announced plans to have an international performance center to act as a feeder system to the entire company, which means it's only a matter of time before they hire the newest trainer for India, the Great Khali. That's all for Newsflash. Let's get back to the show. In the case of a character created out of spite that's actually pretty good, Raven tells a story of how he created Sign Guy Dudley as a way to get back at a fan. Apparently there was a fan at the ECW arena who, at a after party / drug carousel, I don't know what they called them, snubbed Raven as he was quoting here, keeping kayfabe. Raven was so offended at the idea of a fan, thinking that he was in the business enough to keep kayfabe, he decided he was going to create a character to take the guy's gimmick. The guy used to carry signs, so he decided to create a character that exclusively carried signs. Thus came Sign Guy Dudley. The entire gimmick was created to piss off a fan. The guy, by the way, Sign Guy Dudley, worked there for years after that, later becoming Louis Dangerously, and ended up with an indie career, all to piss off a fan in the ECW arena. I don't care what you say about spite, that's pretty funny. Our next gimmick was created purely out of spite, but actually became one of the most successful members of the WWE roster in their entire history. That's right, I'm talking about Hunter Hearst Helmsley. That's right, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, the Cerebral Assassin, the King of Kings, the King. I don't know how many gimmicks he has. Point is, the character was originally created as an American aristocrat who wore riding boots, a long jacket, who literally looked his nose down at people. Now, what was the inspiration for the character? Well, Vince McMahon hated his neighbors. That's right, Vince McMahon actually grew up in North Carolina with his mother and stepfather, meeting his real father, Vince McMahon Sr., years later. He grew up with a working class attitude. Some people have said he's just as comfortable in a board meeting as hearing a fart joke. So with that, when you take that personality and move it into Greenwich, Connecticut, where they invented money, it doesn't work out exactly the way you're planning it. He moves in, and his old money neighbors don't really care for him much. So what does he do? He decides to create a character exclusively to crap on them. Now, understand, this is a kind of spite that's really intricate because it requires a gimmick. You have to take a wrestler, make a gimmick, put it on TV, and understand that the people you're lambasting will never see it. But basically, people who do not know them will indirectly hate the people that you also hate. You following me? No? Vince McMahon did. Anyway, years before he became a member of D-Generation X, years before he hired a guy to run over Steve Austin for The Rock or something, I don't know, and even more years before he simulated sex on a mannequin that was representing a dead cheerleader. Wow, this rabbit hole got deep. Anyway, years before any of this, Hunter S. Helmsley was just an American aristocrat carrying a cane and talking about how he was better than everyone else, created exclusively to lambast Vince McMahon's neighbors. That's what you can do when you have that kind of money and national television. You can create a gimmick to talk about your neighbors on TV, and then eventually that guy marries your daughter. It's not always positive, but it works out that way sometimes. Which brings us to arguably the most successful gimmick created purely out of spite in the WWF's history. That's right, the right to censor. The Parents Television Council was run by a guy named L. Brent Bozell, which, in addition to sounding like a guy who was born with a tie on, he was also a leader of a group that was insanely Christian, insanely censor-friendly, and even recruited former wrestling fan Steve Allen. Steve Allen, of course, appeared at WrestleMania 6 with the Bolsheviks in the bathroom. I'm not joking. But had since turned against professional wrestling and what he saw as not family friendly. Well, I think I could speak for all wrestling fans when I say we saw family friendly in the early 90s, and it wasn't a great thing. It created the Repo Man. So your move, Steve Allen. Anyway, so as time went on, instead of not watching television, instead of just simply turning the TV off when WWF programming came on, L. Brent Bozell, the Parents Television Council, Steve Allen and co. decided they wanted the government to censor television. When they realized that wasn't going to happen, they started writing letters to advertisers on WWF programming, arguing that it did this and that and was terrible and it was horrible for people's morals. And of course, being advertisers, some of them caved in, gave up entirely because they couldn't stand the idea of being separated from their money. In response, the WWF created a group just to lambast them a little bit more called the Right to Censor. Stevie Richards wasn't doing a whole lot, so they shaved his head, or got his hair cut at least, and made him Steven Richards. He recruited a porn star, Val Venus, a pimp, the Godfather, who became the Good Father, former prison guard Bull Buchanan, and Ivory, because she was the one on the women's roster who looked most like a school marm. The group would actually be quite successful, having feuds with Jerry Lawler, the Cat, the APA, the Dudley Boys, before eventually being destroyed and eaten whole by The Undertaker. The whole gimmick was created to spite the Parents Television Council. Their entrance music was just simply noises and buzzers. It was the most awful thing you ever heard in your life, and it was intended to be such. I mean, they were destroyed in one night by The Undertaker, but until then, they actually had a good run. So again, they created a successful gimmick out of pure spite against a crazy right-wing Christian who didn't know when to shut up. WWE takes controversy and turns it into something amazing. Not everyone one liked the RTC. I know no one liked the music, but it was different and it was a response to what was actually happening at the time, and it worked within the Attitude Era framework. So for a Spike gimmick, it was actually pretty successful. Just a heads up, if you have a topic you want covered, if you have a topic idea, a question, anything, want to send me hate mail, whatever, put it below the video and I might address it on a future episode. So that'd be cool. Well, that's going to do it for this time. I'm Dan, this is Exploder. Have a good one.